as a young boy, my dad built boats in our backyard in our shop, and I always had a boat ever since I was a kid, from a little rowboat all the way up to little motor boats. And the one thing I loved to do with those boats were fish. And when I was younger, my mother actually commercial fished in Bristol Bay. So I would come every summer and be on the beaches watching my mom fish in Bristol Bay there. And I just knew I wanted to be a part of that. I wanted to work on boats, and plus the fishing aspect was awesome. And so as I got older, I continued to come out for the summers and fish in Bristol Bay, set netting specifically with my aunts and uncles. And I did that and pretty much till I was about in high school. And during that time, my folks, we were actually living in Anchorage at the time. We would travel to Seward almost every weekend because my dad had a boat that he had built and wanted to take it out and go fishing and check out Seward. And one of the things I saw in Seward were all the charter boats going by, and I thought to myself, man, those guys get paid to go out fishing every single day. That'd be pretty cool. So I after I graduated high school, the day that I graduated, I had my truck loaded up, and I knew I was going to Seward, and I didn't know what I was going to do down there. All I knew was I was going to try to start walking the docks and start looking for a boat job. And so I went down there with no real idea what I was going to do when I started walking the docks and started seeing guys washing boats. So I started asking if I could start washing some charter boats in the evenings, and I ended up starting to get a couple boats every day. That turned into learning how to fillet fish, and that turned into getting a deckhand job with one of the local charter companies out there, and I started learning the whole charter game. And that took me into a 9 consecutive year long charter industry career for a little while. And during that career, doing that, that led to another pathway. That was another captain had said, Justin, if you want to work on boats, you should consider the merchant marines. And I had no clue what the merchant marines even were, what they're about, what you did. But one of the things he told me about is he used to sail out on the merchant marines, and he would tell me about all these exotic places that he went around the world and get paid to travel and see all these cool things. And I was a young, probably 18-year-old, 19-year-old Alaskan kid that never been out of the state. I didn't know anything about shipping out merchant marines. So one day it was a bad weather day, and he asked me to come over to give him a hand with some work at his house. And so I went over, and this captain that I worked for, he was a talker, which made him so good with talking with people and charter fishing. He comes out on the phone and he says, "Yeah, I got this young Alaska kid here interested in the merchant marines. Tell him what you just told me." And so he hands me the phone. This lady on the phone said, "Yeah, there's this an opportunity right now that there's a program that pays for Alaska kids to go through the merchant marines for free. All you have to do is say you're interested, and write us a little letter saying that you're interested in doing it." And so I went home that night and thought, opportunity doesn't always go knocking at your door. Maybe I should consider this. And so I did. And I called that lady back, and long story short, they shipped me over to the East Coast. I went through an apprenticeship program at Piney Point, Maryland, out of all places, with the SIU, and this is an unlicensed department that I'll talk about here in a little bit. But basically, I did an apprenticeship program over there on the East Coast for about 2 years. And in between that 2 years, you sail out for a little bit on ships and kind of get the taste on what deep sea life is like, and then you go back to school. So I did that, graduated that, and then I continued to build my sea time while still coming back to Seward and charter fishing in the summertime. And I did that for a number of years until I got enough time for my captain's license. I ran boats down there for a number of years, and then doing deep sea in the winter time. So it worked out good because not only could I have the summers off, but then I had employment in the wintertime as well, depending on what I wanted to do. And from that, I just kept sailing and upgrading my sea time and upgrading endorsements. And that led me into tugboats, because one of the things that I did see on the ships was I'd always look down, I'd see those tugboats pushing the ships, and I always thought, man, those look fun. I'd really like to do that. and that's where it's led me in today, where I've been on tugboats for, I think, going on 13 years now. I've been with the same company, and I'm based out of Anchorage. So we assist all the freight that comes into Anchorage, all the fuel, all the barges, and we assist it all. And a lot of those barges end up coming out here, so we put our hands on it first, and basically now I just kind of want to explain to, why am I here, interested in trying to pass this along, because one, I love Bristol Bay. There's no doubt about it that this is an amazing place. I love it out here, but finding good paying jobs in Bristol Bay is tough, especially in these shoulder seasons if you aren't directly a fisherman. And opportunities with the maritime industry can help out with breaking that up, depending on a lot of these companies have different schedules. The schedule I work a 2-week on, 2-week off. So I'm literally home for 6 months out of the year. Every 2 weeks I'm coming and going, and it's a good paying job, keeps paychecks coming in, and I recommend it to anybody because it's been a good career for me. And yeah, we can start on the slideshow tab.
Sounds good. And while I'm going to that, I don't want to get ahead of it, but are you going to talk about what sea time is?
Yeah. So I'll discuss that towards the end. And sea time, I mean, yeah, we'll discuss that towards the end. But we'll talk about that and how you can add that up. And yeah, we'll kind of go through a little slideshow here. So I kind of put this together, just a quick slideshow to kind of talk about some of the stuff. You can go to the next one. So, there's different maritime paths, like the U.S. Merchant Marines, like what I told you I did for a little bit, where you sail out deep sea on merchant ships, and that goes all around the world. So you can take ships anywhere with different unions and whatnot. You got the Coast Guard, which is always a good one, the Navy, they'll get you out on boats. Commercial fishing, like we all know here in Bristol Bay, what everybody gets usually their start on. Tugs and barges, the charter industry, and then last but definitely not least is the support roles that help any of the maritime industries. They're all very good paying jobs. We can go to the next one. So here's a picture of a container ship. I just got off the internet, but this is kind of like what you'd working on if you decided to go deep sea. Ships just like this that transit all around the world, that haul a ton of our goods. When I was in the Seafarers International Union sailing deep sea, you'd sign a contract anywhere from 90 days, so 3 months, to 6 months, depending on how long you wanted to be out for. And all of these jobs are very good paying jobs. Especially with the different unions. The union that I was in, they not only pay you while you were on the ship, monthly rate depending on the contract, but they paid equal time when you were home. So if you worked 4 months on the ship, they would pay half of your wage for those 4 months once you got home for another. So basically, if you worked 4 months, they'd pay you 2 months worth of pay after you got home and to the beach. So it worked out really well. The paychecks didn't stop coming and gave you some time at home. And there's two main departments on the Merchant Marines. There's a license department, which is the mates, the chief engineers, the captains. Those are all licensed departments, which you would take a little bit of schooling to go through. Most of them are a 4-year school if you want to just come off the street and go right to a maritime university. And then there's also the unlicensed departments, and that's how I came up. They call that the hosspipe way, basically from the bottom to the top. And I started off on the ships as an OS. So a young guy off the street, and you start off with the lowest paying job, and as you acquire sea time and experience, you're able to move up from there. And we can turn the next one.
Yeah. Okay, sorry, you have a question.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Can you gain your license while working an unlicensed job, or do you have to go to school? Like, can you gain your licenses while you're working?
Absolutely. Yeah. So there's multiple different licenses you can get. And like, let's just say, for instance, you're new off the street, you work on these ships. Like a 6-pack license is usually like a smaller, pretty much one of the smallest licenses you can get, but a lot of people get them because you can work on the boats out here on the rivers, and you only need 365 days before you can take that test. And so basically you can continue gathering your sea time in the unlicensed department, get your licenses, and keep moving up. So after that one, it might be a 50-ton license. And you can keep getting sea time, and then after that's a 100-ton license. The one major huge deal with shipping out deep sea is when you're on that ship, it's considered unlimited tonnage time, and that trumps all other tonnage, because when you're saving or basically adding all your sea time up for these licenses, in order to keep going up in size, you have to have time on vessel. And so, like, for me, that's how I was able to climb ahead so early in life, because I had all this unlimited tonnage sea time, which is huge, because the Coast Guard isn't just going to let you go run a ship when all you've been running is a little skiff out in the rivers for 5 years. So if you have tonnage or tonnage time on ships and whatnot, you can quickly move up the ladder on getting different licenses and captain's licenses, or even engineering licenses for that fact of the matter. I don't want to not think about those guys too, because they go on horsepower rating. So if you have very high horsepower rating the ships you're working on, you can quickly move up the ranks in the engineering department as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And we turn there we go. So here is Cal Maritime, or California Maritime School. This is a 4-year school that a lot of people, there's a handful of them in the US. There's West Point, there's California Maritime School, and these are the schools that basically you'd go to for a 4-year program. And when you get out of the school, they have different levels of licenses that you have that you get as soon as you leave. I think the lowest one that you can get right off the bat is a 1,600-ton license. And a lot of these people going to these schools are going directly from the school to the ships. So they'll go do their 4-year school, and then they start off usually as a third mate, unlimited, which stands for unlimited tonnage. And from there, there's the third mate, second mate, first or chief mate, and then captain. And so these guys go right from school. A lot of these people have never even sailed out on small boats or ships or anything, and they go directly from that school to a very high-paying job, right onto the ships. And I know that there are some Alaska grants and scholarships that help people can go through this. And if I was to do it over again, I would probably recommend trying to go to one of these schools, because you come out right out of the school, usually already employed and making some very decent money. But the only thing it's challenging is the 4 years being away from home. And if you can deal with that, I would definitely recommend trying to get on a school like this. Like I said, there's a lot of programs and grants out there that will help you try to get in something like this if you're interested. All right, we can go and turn the page. Okay, so this is the SIU. This is the Seafarers International Union. This was the school that I went to when I joined the SIU as an apprentice. You can see the school. They have it's a big building there. We had a training ship there. You can see it at the dock. It's a very nice school. In the very back there's basically those buildings to the far left. Those were the school buildings, and so we'd go basically walk from the big white building where we lived to the school buildings every single day. And there's a picture of how we had to dress in uniform while we were there. And this is a great way for young people to go from off the street with not a lot of time to getting right on the ships and start making money right away. And this was good for me because I was young, and they basically take care of you while you're there. They house you, they feed you, they put you to school, and while you're an apprentice, they actually pay you a little bit of money. It's not a lot, but yeah, I mean, all your needs are being taken care of. You know, you like I said, you got free housing, they feed you, and you're going to school, but they do pay you while you're there going to school, which is kind of one of the cool things about the SIU. And they're a big union. You can take ships all around the world with this union, but the SIU is strictly for the unlicensed people, right? You know, like OSs, ordinary seamen, ABs, they call them, able-bodied seamen, and they have like AB wheel watch, where you spend just your whole time on the ship up on the bridge with the mates. Also very good paying, and I think this union requires 4 months a year participation. So you can stay within that union as long as you sail out for 4 months a year. That's all they require to keep your status with them. And the other cool thing about doing the apprentice program is there's 3 types of books when you get to hold when you're a union member. There's A book, which is the highest seniority, B book, which is pretty darn good, and C book, and those are usually reserved for guys right off the street that don't have a lot of experience. But when you graduate the apprenticeship program, you come out with a B book seniority, which is a pretty huge thing, because that means you could pretty much get a job wherever you want, depending on when the ships become available. I mean, the A books are reserved for people that have been there for 8 years or longer. So you have, coming through the program, you have quite a bit of positive things that really boost you up and can get you out there working if you really want to work. And we can turn the page here. All right, so here's another good one. You know, like I said before, I don't want to discount the Coast Guard or the Navy. These are both great places that will put you up, feed you, house you, take care of you while you're in the programs, and they also get you a lot of sea time. I've worked with a handful of guys over the years that did 4 years in the Coast Guard, and they've continued on with different licenses and moved up the path. And so it's another great start if you are interested in doing any of that kind of or that path at all. All right, we can turn the page here.
I just want to jump in here. So I was in the Navy, and I didn't think about keeping track of my sea time and using it in the future. And I wish someone had mentioned that going in. So,
yeah, that's a huge thing. Yeah, and that's a lot of people don't know about, which we'll discuss here in a little bit. But yeah, if you can keep track of your sea time, that will give you so much.
Keeping track of your sea time is going to be where, if you wanted to work your way up to one of these licenses.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Not required for you to go out and run your boat
Nope.
and go fishing anywhere like that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we can turn the page here. Okay, one of our favorites, Bristol Bay fishing. This is, I mean, it's right here in our backyard. It's something pretty much everybody does or has their fingers in, whether it's even setnet or Bristol Bay boats. All of these things, not only are they good paying jobs if you have a good season and obviously the price is right, but they also, continuing on with that sea time, they get you sea time on boats. I recommend Bristol Bay fishing. I love the fishery. I participated in it for many years myself, between set netting and drifting with different people. And it's another good aspect. And a lot of our young people here, their families into it. And I think that's a big hurdle with them trying to make decisions outside of the village, is because they want to come back here and support their family. And with different maritime jobs, you can definitely do that, where you can take the summers off and come back here and fish the fishery with your family and whatnot. All right, we can turn the page. So crab fishing, out, you know, it's not a big thing out here in Bristol Bay, a little further offshore, but another very good way to gain experience, to gain boat time, different opportunities that do pay well. They might not be the funnest of jobs. I mean, we've all seen Deadliest Catch and how hard those guys work, but it's definitely an opportunity to get out there and make some money, and it's local. And we can turn the page. Okay, here's another good one. Seining for salmon. You know, instead of gill net, you can do seining. Get out there on the boats and try to find somebody that usually not so much around Bristol Bay, but more south central, southeast. They do a lot of seining. That's also another good paying job that can get you out there. Let me turn the page. All right, and one of my favorites right here, tractor tugs. What I do. As I don't know if you guys are familiar with tractor tugs, but tractor tugs specifically are basically, we have drives in the stern that rotate 360 degrees. That's what basically identifies them as a tractor tug. You know, so if you can visualize, most standard boats have propellers and rudders behind them that move to help with steering. Well, the tractor tugs, the big drives, basically the whole propeller moves 360 degrees, and there's no reverse on them. So basically, if you want to go in reverse, you spin the pods backwards and shoot thrust forwards, kind of deal. And you know, so they're very, very maneuverable. It's kind of like playing a video game. There's no wheel in the wheelhouse. You basically sit up in a chair, and there's two joysticks on either side of you that move independently. And if you can get on one of these boats, or even deckhanding or ABing on them, a lot of tugboat companies are paying their crewmen very well, which I'm like I said, I'm a big supporter of tractor or the tug fleet because I'm on them and I work with them, and so yeah, there's a ton of opportunities out there, even locally too. We have a handful of tugboats that run in Bristol Bay every summer that are always looking for crew members that can never seem to find any, and they pay well. So it's something to consider if you're interested in trying to do something more professional. All right, we can turn it.
You've got another question.
I have lots of questions. What kind of
no problem.
tug make that you operate on typically? What kind of horsepower?
Sorry, say that one more time.
Horsepower rating on the tug that you're running?
Yeah, so the one that I'm on is about 3,500 horsepower. And I'm kind of like the medium size tug in my fleet. We have two other tugs that are both over 5,000 horsepower, so a lot of power.
So just out of curiosity, say like whenever you're trying to calculate your tonnage time or time and
Yes.
time, like is that based on the tonnage of the tug or the tonnage of the
Correct. Yeah. So you know, I've talked about it a couple of times, is those small vessel sea service forms are basically the starter to get you on your way. And on that form, it's going to ask you for where you know, let's just say, for example, a Bristol Bay drift boat. I've worked in Bristol Bay. It'll ask you how long the boat is, what the tonnage size of it is, and horsepower rating, and basically where did you operate, how far away from shore. Now, when you start getting, your career moves on, you have multiple different vessels that you worked on, you'll see the different tonnage size, and that will help you continue moving your license forward. So if you've worked on small boats, you'll probably need some time. They'll say, hey, you depending on the license you want, might say you need 360 days on vessels over 50 tons. And so that will hopefully push you to say, okay, well, I need to get on a bigger boat. Let me go do 360 days on a bigger boat, and then I can acquire that next license. So every license has specific ratings. And there's the one thing that's wild about the Coast Guard is one license might have multiple ways to get that license. Like, for instance, it might say you only need 360 days on 50-ton vessels or higher, or if you've worked over 100-ton vessels, you only need 100 days, for instance. So there's multiple ways to get to the same license if you want it.
How do they verify? I understand on a big cargo ship, you have lots of people with licenses and certifications and stuff.
Yep.
On our Bristol Bay boats, who signs off that you have a certain number of hours on that boat?
The captain.
Because they have a license that would be an official.
Well, most of Bristol Bay boats, you don't need captain's license to run to operate them, but usually it's the captain that signs them, or signs the owner of the vessel. And it, as far as verification, this is where it gets a little dicey, because I've never really heard of anybody or the Coast Guard reaching out to a guy and saying, "Hey, did this guy really work, 20 days on your boat?" As long as everything's signed and by the captain, it's pretty official. And most of these higher tonnage vessels, like the ships, they'd actually print off like a certified sea service form from the ship, from the owner of the company, whoever the company might be, and it'd be like a real thing. But I have small vessel sea service forms when I used to not drift, but set net from my uncle on little 25-foot aluminum boat. That still added to my initial sea time when I was first getting started. And it's something that when you fill them out, you want to keep them forever. When you send them into the Coast Guard for verification, only send them copies. Never give them your original. Just remember that. Never give them your originals. Always keep them for life.
Is there a standardized logbook, kind of like what they use for aircraft pilots?
No, there isn't. Although that'd be a good one though. The crazy thing about the Coast Guard, not only do they govern all the licenses, they are like they're stuck in 1985 from all their tests. But also they just move so slow, they don't want to get with the times. For instance, when I had to go for in my oceans license, they wanted me to go take a celestial navigation class. So I had to go learn how to shoot stars with a sextant, just that we will never do in real life nowadays. But they wanted that done in order for that license, which is pretty crazy. All right, we can turn the page here. So here's another tractor tug, the Millennium Falcon, that one of my coworkers used to run down in California. It's another 5,000 horsepower tug, very big tug. That was kind of a cool picture. We can turn over next one. So here is a picture of pulling out a tanker. This isn't in Alaska, but kind of what we do when we're doing ship assist with these tractor tugs. You can see the line going up to the bow, and sometimes we'll have another tug like you see in there running the inside and help push the bow off. But kind of see how what we see from the operator's seat when we're doing some of these ship jobs. All right, we turn the page.
Another question.
Yeah.
Is there a difference in the ships? For example, if they're pulling a barge up from down the lower 48 up to here in Bristol Bay, is that going to be the same kind of tugs that you guys are using for just shoving boats around inside of ports as well?
No. So they haven't been making tugs fast enough, if I could say that. And a lot of the long haul tugs that we encounter, that especially bringing up barges from Washington up to Alaska, probably 90% of them are all propeller and prop type of boats. They're not Z drive tractor tugs. Although there's Western Towboat has made a couple of Z drive tractor tugs that do long haul, but the fleet just hasn't caught up with the times yet. And a lot of these tugboats coming up, some of them are still from the 40s, believe it or not, still running up here, and they just can't make them quick enough. And the tugs are getting more expensive. Obviously, going tractor tug is an expensive to build one. And there's few more moving parts on a tractor tug than a conventional propeller and rudder type of old tugboat. So the picture right here, this is the tug that I drive, the Stellar Wind, and this is in Cook Inlet, and you can see this is a typical winter that we see in Cook Inlet. We are the only I can't say ice class, but I tell people ice resistant tugs that stay in Cook Inlet year round up in the ice. And the ice is very challenging. Boats aren't supposed to run through ice, which is kind of fun, but and even the ships. So you can see in this picture, I mean, this is the inlet, and you can see ice from one side to the other. Well, this is where, when we do the ship assist, this is where it gets tricky in the wintertime, because the ships can't dock against the dock if they have ice between the ship and the dock. Have you ever tried taking an ice cube and putting your thumb on it and trying to smash it? It doesn't work. And this is where our tugs, specifically the tractor tubs, come into play. And we mainly do ice mitigation for the ships that are coming inbound. So my tug specifically, I'm in charge of basically mitigation, while the higher horsepower tugs are assisting the ship in. And typically what I'll do is, in Cook Inlet, we have some of the biggest tides there. And so the current's always moving. So typically the ships come in on the flood. So it's the water's coming in. So what I'll do is I'll go in and I'll T-bone the dock at the berth where they're going to dock up to. And I'll put my bow tire to it, so 90 degrees to it, and I'll start pushing the dock. And I'll bring them up to about a third or sometimes half throttle. And what that does, and not only am I blocking the ice that's coming in with my bow, but also my wheel wash, like you can see in this photo, is shooting that ice behind me. And so what that starts to do is basically the upriver side of my boat will start flushing out with ice, and it'll start opening up water. And as time happens, it opens up down the dock face, and we have another tug that comes in there, and we call it sweeping the ice out. And they'll come in and start pushing that ice out of the way from between the ship and the dock, and that allows them to get to the dock, which a lot of people don't even think about or have thought twice about. But the ice in Cook Inlet is pretty real some years. And we turn the page. All right, so I don't know if you guys remember, a number of years back, the Cougar Ace. This vessel was, I think, down by the Aleutians and tipped over due to, I think it was poor ballasting. But who comes to the rescue when stuff like that happens? Tugs do. So good opportunity. I can't remember if this is the Millennium Star or Millennium Falcon, but another boat that's up here quite often, helping with stuff like this. And we turn the page. All right, so back to good old Seward. Like I told you, where I got my start from. So the tourism industry down in Seward is huge, and this is just one example. The Kenai Fjord Tours out of Seward, they have a bunch of boats, and they are always looking for employees that will spend the summer down there and work on these boats. So Kenai Fjords, they have great programs for their employees that are seasonal, where they put them up they put them in housing. They take care of their employees. They feed them during the day, and then they pay them to take all these people out, basically nature watching, go to the glaciers, look for whales. So another good opportunity for young people if you're interested in wildlife. All right, we'll turn the page.
Question with that, as far as that goes, does your experience on a tour boat equal what it would be if your experience was on a container ship? Is it all the same as far as your licensing goes?
No, absolutely not. So with like small boats like this, say for instance, you're a young person, a high school kid that's interested in working on something like this, you do not need a license. You can basically walk off the street and come right to one of their boats and jump on and be legal to do that. And because this is a good stepping stone for you to start acquiring sea time, and there's no license needed for it because of the size of vessel and the tonnage of it. As far as ships go, you're going to have to get at least an OS license, which is an ordinary seaman, which is another one. It's a stepping stone. You don't need a lot of time for it to get it. I can't remember how many days. For some reason, I'm thinking it's like 360 days or 365 days on vessels. to get an OS license, and I don't believe there's a test for it. I believe you can just apply for it and they'll give it to you. But after that, then you start needing to do the next one is STOS, and that's specially trained ordinary seaman. The one after that is AB, able-bodied seaman, which an AB, depending on size of vessels that you've worked on in the past, you only need 365 days for that as well, depending on that size. And you can get, I think you have to take a small test for it through the Coast Guard, but if you can get your AB ticket quickly, it's most guaranteed way to start making some decent money right off the bat. And also you get you on bigger vessels as well, if you have that endorsement.
Thank you.
So here's a picture of me down in the lower left corner there with the green hat. This was a typical day in Seward when I used to run charter boats down there. It was obviously, you can see it was pretty nice fish, and my deckhands there and the green hoodie. But I thought getting paid to fish was pretty darn cool. And so that's, like I said, I did that for 9 consecutive summers. And yeah, just another typical day down there in rainy Seward. All right. So this was a boat that I ran out of Seward that was called the Legend. It's a 50-foot Delta. And this is a typical boats that they have down there. I would take 18 passengers out with, depending on 1 to 2 deckhands. So it was me, captain, and 2 deckhands. Once again, these deckhands aren't licensed. So you can literally come off the street with 0 sea time, and as long as you have a strong ability to work and are interested in talking to people and being social and having a good time, this is another good opportunity. And not only that, but you get paid to fish, which is super fun. And a lot of these boats down there are pretty darn nice. Like, they're nice equipment. But like I said, this is a typical boat you see down at Seward. This is a 50-foot Delta. This particular boat had high horsepower engines. I think it had 1,000 horse in it total, and it would cruise. That 50-foot boat, we'd do about 30 knots with it. We'd burn a ton of fuel though. Okay. So here's another charter boat. This was the company that I actually worked for down there for 9 years. This is Aurora Charters. This is one of their newer boats. I think this one was called the Polaris. But you can see people fishing for salmon, and another nice Seward day. Obviously, Seward is beautiful to go out of. I mean, you just see the rocks behind there. Awesome place. And it's fun. And the one thing I don't want to forget too is the guys working on the deckhands and captains working on these boats. They make a lot of money in tips. Tips are a huge one. And so it's a really good opportunity that a lot of people think or forget about, that it's extra income, it's under the table, and it's pretty good. Okay, so different type of support roles. We talked about that in the beginning. There's welders, fabricators, technicians, all different type. There's surveying. I actually do marine surveys here in Naknek for the Bristol Bay fleet over here. And so it's not on the water, but it's another maritime associated job that they pay decent, and they're always needing people. I've been working with a guy out here that did marine surveys for the last 40, going on 45 years. It's been his full-time job, and he's leaving. And if nobody else stepped up to the plate, there would be nobody out here. And as far as I know, there's nobody doing marine surveys over in Dillingham. So, I mean, there's a ton of opportunity if you're interested in doing stuff like that. And a lot of it is just getting into it. Is just having the experience and the knowledge and the sea time in order to continuing different paths down the maritime industry. And this is obviously a brand new Bristol Bay boat that fishes out here. So this is actually in Anchorage at North Star, at one of the docks that we assist barges into in the port of Anchorage.
You don't need a time to be a surveyor, right?
What's that?
You don't need sea time to become a surveyor, do you?
No, you don't need any sea time to become a surveyor, but a lot of it goes on experience. And especially if you want to be accredited with any of the big surveying entities out there, they want a lot of experience. Experience comes by time on the deck of a boat somewhere.
Okay.
All right. So here's another picture of my tugboat. This was long before I started working there. And if you look closely, there's a guy holding a line on a giant piece of ice there. And this was the old owner of the company before we got basically bought out by Foss Maritime. But I see it on the internet every now and then, and it always makes me laugh because I think it's just one of the coolest photos that I've seen as far as our company photos go. And this was back before we put the big tires on the bow, and this was back when the Stellar one was pretty new here in Alaska. Okay. Okay, so this is a Z-drive pod right here. This is one of them. So there's two of them on most of the tugs, and you can see the size of the propeller. A lot of them are huge. You can stand up in the nozzle. So that whole unit is just basically held up in the hull, and it's like I said before, it spins 360 degrees, and so it can put thrust in any direction, and that's what probably one of the coolest thing about these tractor tugs that they can do is the maneuverability and the thrust in any direction. If you think about a typical boat with propellers and rudders, I like to call them two-dimensional because really you only can go forward and you go back. I mean, you can turn with your rudders limited, but with these boats, you can put 100% thrust in any direction. And I tell people these boats are three-dimensional boats. If you can dream it up, and you could probably do it with these boats. They'll move in any direction and so fluidly. They're absolutely amazing. All right, we can turn the page. So here is one of our tugboats on the stern there. That's the Bearing Wind, the blue one on the stern of this barge. And this is AML. I think this is a bunch of empties going to Bristol Bay. And this is typically how we take them off the dock. We call it Chinese style, where we have two tugs just like this. The tug in the front there with the red stripe, that's one of the Dunlap's tugs. And that's an old I think it's a Robinson class tug that is, I think maybe in the 70s they were built. But propellers and rudders with a big stern winch. And that's what brings these barges all the way over Bristol Bay. But with like the way the Bearing Wind is up on the stern there of the barge, with just one tug and the way they're positioned, we can move that barge effortlessly in any direction. I mean, we have 100% control of it with the way we're positioned back there on the hip. And right now in this picture, those guys, they either just flopped from coming up, or B, we're just getting them sailed out. So the tug on the bow there is making up their gear, disconnecting it, so we can grab the barge, or we're handing it off to them, one of the two. But typically they will cut loose on the flood, and so we're pointed to the north right now, which is to the upper inlet. So basically, when they're ready to go, that red tug, the red and white one, will come off, and we'll spin that barge all the way behind them and set them on their way as they leave. But when we grab it like this, like I said, 100% control, no problem at all. That big barge is nothing. Okay, we can turn the page. All right, so here's pictures of me and my coworker, and us chipping off ice. And I mean, you can see how much ice is out there on the inlet. I'm standing on a rub rail on the picture to the left there, chopping ice off of it because we loaded up, just working. And then just another winter day out there in Cook Inlet. All right, so here is there's the Stellar Wind on the very bottom of the picture there, and the barge you're seeing up there is I think that was the old Java Sea. So they're pushing fuel up to Anchorage, and we're out doing an ice escort because the fuel has still keep coming in Anchorage. And so if a tanker can't bring it, these guys bring it every about once a week. They'll come over from Valdez to Anchorage, and a lot of the stuff they're bringing is avgas and jet fuel for Anchorage International and Elmendorf, but you can see there's a tug on the right side of the main tug there, and they're helping push on that barge because it's hard to see in this picture, but the ice is so thick that the actual ATB is struggling to get through. So we will tie up another tug to it and give it more horsepower to get through, and then I run free. And if there's big pans of ice, what I'll do is I'll run up in front of the ATB and I'll start breaking the ice in front of them so they can start following me, and we'll keep on trudging up through the inlet to get them to Anchorage. All right. Here's another picture of our Z drives. This is on the Stellarwind on my tug. But you can see how they kind of look underneath the vessel. We were just doing an inspection on the drives, and this is just going dry in the mud. A lot of tugs can't do this, which is pretty wild. I think we're one of the few places in Alaska that do this frequently, where we actually just go dry on the keel, and we can sit there next to the dock. Okay, of course we're tied up very, very well, so the vessel doesn't tip over. But yeah, it's pretty interesting. All right. So the biggest question: pay. What does pay look like, and is it right for you? All right. So these are just some of the pay scales that I've seen in my short career in the maritime industry. Deckhands, whether you're starting out brand new, right off the street, whether it be Bristol Bay, Kenai Fjords tours down in Seward, maybe charter fishing. These guys are getting paid $100 to $200 a day right off the bat. So it's pretty darn good. Able-bodied seamen, AB is what they call them for short. I'd say 200 to 300 on the low end, and I've heard of ABs making all the way up to the 350 a day, depending on what kind of vessel, what kind of contract the vessel has. Six-pack captains, probably one of the first licenses you can get if you're trying to come up as a captain. And those allow you to run all the boats out here in Western Alaska, as far as like the river boats and smaller vessels. It's a good stepping stone to kind of get the lay of the land. But they're paying, 150, 250 a day for those kind of captains. 100-ton captains, 200 to 300 plus tips. I want to put in there. Don't forget about tips, because the tips are pretty big, especially in the charter industry. And 500-ton captains, I'd say, $450 to $700 a day, and then all the way up to 1,600-ton captains, which we find pretty often on the tugs. We're somewhere in $850, and that's locally. And other tugs out there, some of them are $1,000 a day, depending on what the contract and what the vessel is doing. So there's a ton of money to be made, especially if you're interested in doing anything like this. Okay. How do you get started? Well, like we talked about, you can get started right now. If you've worked any time on whether it be a canoe, it can be anything. As long as it's floated and it's a boat, you can log sea time for it. And what you need to do in order to do that is you need to get a small vessel sea service form. It's a Coast Guard form, and start filling it out. And it's very simple. It asks you about how many days you've worked, what the size of vessel is, where did the vessel go, what was the horsepower, and all you have to do is have your captain sign it, somebody official associated with that boat. And
fishing vessel in order for that to count, then?
It could be any vessel.
Commercial vessel, period, not fishing necessarily, but me going out in my skiff doesn't count towards my hours, right?
It does, absolutely does. And if you're the owner of the skiff, you can write off that sea service form. Absolutely does. Anything, even a canoe. It can start. Obviously, probably a small boat doesn't have big tonnage, but it will definitely add to your days. So don't discount it. Everything adds towards it. And so after you log so many days, it qualifies you for different endorsements, whether you want to do a captain's license, whether you want to do an OS or an AB license. They call it the Haas pipe, and that's what I did, moving from the bottom up. I didn't go to a 4-year maritime school. I started on Bristol Bay boats, and I just kept gathering my sea time and working up, and that's what they call the Haas pipe. And as you get further in your maritime career, you will need to go to school. But the maritime industry is so wild, is that if you get on with a company, a good company, most all these companies will pay for your schooling. I mean, every time that I have to renew my captain's license, which is every 5 years, anytime that I have to get revalidation, whether it's basic safety training or firefighting, I go take the class, I pay for it, and I hand the company my receipt, and they pay for it. All these companies do that, and a lot of these aren't hard schools. They just want to check it off the box that you've been, you know how to put out a fire if you're on a vessel that knows it has a fire. So they're not hard stuff. There's schools all over. Avtech down in Seward is a big school that does a lot of different endorsements, and there's a ton of them down in America that all offer the same type of schooling. And so it's well worth the money. You might have to front the money, but they always pay for it. And the one thing about the SIU, which I forgot to mention, is when you took a contract, you took a ship, the moment your foot left your porch, they were paying you your day wage while you were traveling. They paid for your hotels. They paid for everything in order for you to get to that ship. They cover everything. The maritime industry is amazing when it comes to this kind of stuff, because they don't leave out much, where they will take care of you. And yeah, you guys have any questions at all?
Can I ask some question?
Yeah.
I come here in Bellingham, but I don't have a working visa. I just come here for my wife as a beneficiary.
Uh-huh.
But I work as in a merchant marine.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So I worked with a ton of people that lived overseas that you can work on the merchant marines, especially, I think if you can get, I'd have to look, but I would say you probably could, and I would definitely look into it if you're interested. They're always needing people. The merchant marines are so short-staffed. They'll take anybody, just because we do not have the manpower right now.
So how can I get work there in Alaska? Because I don't have a working visa.
So if you wanna go in the SIU, like what I did, I would contact the SIU, the Seafarers International Union, and ask them exactly what you need and start there. If you're in, I mean, depending on what you want to do, depending on your sea time, if you're interested in going into the apprenticeship program like what I did, they will line you out on everything you need. Otherwise, if you have a lot of sea time, you might be able to just take some classes and get moving on board with them.
They will sponsor for my working visa and all expenses if I go to apprenticeship.
Sorry, say that one more time.
They will sponsor for my working visa.
Your working visa?
You're asking him?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't think he knows.
Yeah, that'd be a better question for that school.
Yeah, I'd definitely ask the school.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And we had a comment in the chat. Regina, would you like to speak to this?
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, so I just wanted to put this in the chat in the section of the slide where you were talking about support roles. I saw one that was listed as a technician, and I've been seeing advertisements from the Prince William Sound College out in Valdez where they're promoting their free training program to become a marine service technician. You come up with an occupational endorsement certificate from that program. They provide housing, and tuition is free as well. You just need to be 16 years or older to enroll in their program, and it'll be starting at the end of this month.
Thank you for that, Regina. And we also have flyers up around town here advertising that opportunity.
Awesome. I did have some questions also. Here at Jalista Corporation, we're currently working on developing our registered maritime apprenticeship program, and I'm pretty new to maritime overall and apprenticeships as well. And from historical documentation about the last time we had this program available at our corporation, they mentioned requirements for apprentices to have a TWIC card and MMC and OS rating. Do you have any tips on how potential applicants can achieve those or have those ready?
Yeah, so those are all basically some of the prerequisites to kind of getting a license or working on boarding the ships. If anybody is interested, if I can send them basically, I figure I can send them a packet with everything they need with all the forms that would have, tell you what you need to do. You need to get your TWIC license, apply for your MMD, and basically walk you through the steps on what to do. But those are all things you're definitely going to need to do in order to get on a ship per se, or working professionally in a maritime industry.